Hello and welcome, my fellow master players. Well, today's episode, we're looking at the min-max story and how you can min-max your character, maximize those numbers, maximize the skills, whilst at the same time still maintaining an excellent story. Hello, my name is Guy and you're watching How to Be a Great Player. Alright, so min-maxing, how are we going to do that? This is my approach to how you can min-max a character and still have a great story based on that min-maxing. And what this does is it really gives you the best of both worlds if this is something that you like doing. So here is how I go about doing it. We've got the name. Always come up with that name first. I know it's different to the normal approach and it will stretch you to come up with a name first, but you do have to do it. And the reason why I maintain this is that once there's a name, there is a character. Now, it doesn't matter what type of character that is. It doesn't matter what their class is. It just gives them a name. So we're going to do that. We're then going to look at the stats. We're then going to look at personality. And then we're going to look at backstory. So that's the process we're going to go through, hopefully. So the name, why? Why do we start with the name? Well, the name gives us somebody to cling to. So I'm going to say, let's come up with the name of, let's say, Jin. Jin is the name of a character, Jin Mei. Let's say Jin Mei. Let's say we're playing in a slightly oriental campaign. Jin Mei is the name that we've come up with. Now, how did I come up with that name? Well, I thought of a letter. I want a name that begins with a J. And so you go, okay, Jasper, Jeremy, Julian, Jin. Jin sounds interesting. How can I add or move Jin forward? Could it be Jan, Jen, June, Jun, John? Could be any one of those things, but Jin is how I got there. And then Jin Mei, to me, is something that I've heard before. Perhaps it seems to flow nicely off of the tongue. So that's how I came up with it. Now, I've also been testing it. So I've tested Jin Mei. It sounds quite lovely. It sounds quite lyrical. It sounds quite musical. Jin Mei. This is Jin Mei the bard, Jin Mei the warrior goddess, Jin Mei the starship captain, Jin Mei, it doesn't matter, Jin Mei works. So Jin Mei it is. When you're coming up with a name, literally, there's videos on this channel on how to come up with names if you really want to. But usually I choose a letter first and then I expand on that and then all sorts of interesting things get added to that. And there's more exercises that you can do if you watch the video on how to expound upon that. So we're not going to do that. We're going to look at Jin Mei and we're going to now min-max Jin Mei. So obviously you need to choose your class. Jin Mei could be any class. There's no prescriptor here. And the important thing is this very bottom rule. Values before all else. Values before all else. You have to stick to your values. You are min-maxing. That's the whole point of your strategy. Your whole intention is to make the very best bard. Jin Mei the bard. Jin Mei the songbird. I could see that working. Maybe it's a wizard. Jin Mei the red. Red Jin Mei. We could play around with that. Jin Mei a warrior. Yes, Jin Mei the ninja, Jin Mei the geisha, Jin Mei, it doesn't matter. You're going to come up with a class. What class do you want to play? Now, oftentimes we can get in a rut where we play the same class over and over and over again. We're comfortable with that class. I had a friend who basically was just a ranger, loved the idea of being a ranger, and so pretty much only played the ranger class. They would min-max a ranger class. They would try different builds within the ranger class. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Do you need to stretch yourself and try and play a priest or some other space that you really have no interest in? No. This is about min-maxing. So if you want to play, and let's choose a class that doesn't often get played, that's tricky because most of them do. Let's say Jin Mei is a priestess. A priestess of what? Well, that depends on the particular build that you're going for because the build is important. That's the min-maxing idea here. So, priest. Priests need wisdom, Charisma is always useful. Maybe a little bit of strength or constitution. We're not entirely sure. I'm not going to go into how to build the perfect priest. That's not the intention of this video. But you are. You're going to go in how to min-max that. You're going to look at the stats that you need. You're going to look at the different types of gods that open up different types of domain spells, all those kinds of wonderful things that go with being a priest. So Jinmei, the priestess, is a priestess of whomever it might be. Whatever campaign setting you're using depends on what god they're going to have access to, but Jinmei is a priestess. Now, she's got all of her stats built specifically for that. So she's going to have a nice high wisdom, she's going to have a good charisma, and she's going to have a good constitution, because we've decided those are the critical things. Dump stats are intelligence and dexterity, because she's going to be wearing heavy plate mail and wielding a flail, but hitting her enemies is not going to be her focus. She's going to be using a lot more divine magic to smite her enemies. That's the particular build we're going with. So we have now built this min-maxed character. We really have. We've made sure her stats are in the right place. Now what do we do? Well, now we go and earn those stats narratively. So what we now do is we say, okay, she has got an 18 wisdom. That means she is incredibly worldly. Wisdom is all about understanding the greater scheme of things, having insight into just the way that life works. That comes with worldly experience, I personally believe. So Jinmei is someone who needs to have traveled. I hate the idea that priests who sit in a monastery all day are those that are worldly. Perhaps they've read books all day would be those that are very scholastic, so they've experienced the world through armchair travel. I don't have a problem with that. But Jinmei, because we've said she's got a great constitution, she's got a good charisma, and she's got a high wisdom, and strength is her next option, I think that we look at that and we say, okay, she has got her wisdom by having traveled the world. She has experienced different continents, she's experienced different cultures, she's experienced different ways of life, and that has given her her wisdom and her insight into things. And because she has a high charisma, it's easy enough for her to travel around. So did she travel around as the princess of some rich king or other? She didn't need to. People with high charisma can talk their way into taverns. They meet someone interesting on the road and stay with them at a campfire for the night. People with high charisma can mingle easily. So I would see that that could be part of her story. So we've got this young lady who has decided that she will go on a worldly adventure. And in her adventures, where she meets different people and she mingles with emperors and kings and beggars and paupers, she starts to understand the fundamentals of religious, or at least of her religion's prescription. And that might be, let's say, she's following a warrior code or something along those lines. She's training with different masters. She's looking at how does the beggar defend themselves? How does the king defend them? You know, all those kinds of interesting things. What type of mindset does that prescribe now? So we've got Jinmei, the priestess, who goes on a world journey. She's going to try and find herself, to identify who she is. And on the route, she meets all of these interesting people. She has these interesting encounters where she learns different things. What type of mindset does that prescribe? To me, that prescribes a mindset of someone who is naturally curious, who is naturally open to new experiences, and who's a people's person. That's what that prescribes to me. So her type of mindset is someone who is comfortable in almost any environment. She doesn't mind getting dirty. She doesn't mind dressing up to attend a ball. To her, it's all just experience. It's all just great and wonderful. And she's curious about it all. She doesn't pass judgment. She absorbs, she relishes and cherishes the differences rather than comparing them. So I would see Jinmei, the priestess, the warrior priestess, as being someone who is curious about life and is happy to go where the wind blows her. What type of personality does that prescribe? So if you want to find the personality videos, that's on Bacon RPG, where I unpack the 9 different types of personalities. The link is below. Now, we've got this curious-minded person who goes where the wind blows. That immediately, to me, jumps out as an adventurer type. That's the adventurer type, or the soul type, but I think more the adventurer type with that combat element where she's good in combat. I think that sort of tapers more in that direction. At least that's my thinking of the whole thing. Now, we've reverse engineered, basically, a very interesting person. So now we fill in the blanks. That means we need to say, okay, so what type of family did she grow? Now we're going into the backstory, because none of this is backstory yet. This is just Jinmei decided to go on a journey because she's an adventurous type who's curious and open-minded. And she also happens to be a priestess, and she's very good at what she does because she's curious and she's open-minded and she goes with the flow. What's her backstory then? Is this someone who grew up in a cloistered monastery and was told, "Thou shalt not seek knowledge outside of these four walls, or ye shall be smited"? I don't think so. Generally, free-spirited people are people who were either raised by free-spirited people or who left home early because they couldn't handle or didn't want to be in a restrictive environment. So Jinmei either grew up on the streets, maybe looking after her brother because they were orphans. Not a huge fan of the orphan backstory, but it does work in this case. Grew up on the streets, her brother became successful, he no longer needed looking after, so she decided to travel. Or perhaps she is the daughter of a fairly wealthy land merchant, and she didn't like the life of just staying in one place. She liked to travel. Perhaps, better yet, and this is just me running through options, her family are a bunch of traders who like exploring, and her mother is busy selling rare furs in the north of the continent, whilst her father is picking up strange wines from the warmer southern climes. She herself has gone off in another direction, and every year, once a year, she and her family make a point of meeting up somewhere on the continent, to share for a week their journeys, their exploits, to discuss life and to make sure each other are happy before once again flitting off to another part of the world. That to me is a very interesting story. This very bohemian-style, happy-go-lucky individual, Jinmei, and her eccentric family who travel the world experiencing life and making money here and there by doing some trade or some training. It doesn't really matter. I think to me that's a very interesting backstory. Now, a dash of fun. I added in a dash of fun because oftentimes we forget to add in that little element of difference. What makes life different? What is Jinmei's difference? If you think about last week's video where we were looking at the different ways of which one can sort of rewrite the story as a comedy, as a drama, as a tragedy, as a romance, all those kinds of options. We want to add a dash of fun. So she's got this family that travels the world and they do their thing and they get back together again once a month. What's her thing? What's her difference? What's her dash of fun? This could be anything. It could be that she likes to wear bells, and so she's known as Jinmei the there's a whole that's a bad analogy. I'm reversing on that. I'm retconning that. She doesn't like to wear bells. Perhaps she likes to wear red ribbons in her hair, so she's known as Jinmei the Red. Something along those lines. That's a dash of fun. It doesn't have to be that she likes to dress up as a clown late at night and go out, entertaining kids at late night kids parties and things. No, a dash of fun just means it's something that makes her stand out in the crowd, makes her a little bit unique, a little bit different. Her backstory is there already, and certainly that does contribute. But what makes our priestess that much different? She likes to wear red ribbons in her hair. Maybe she likes to buy red ribbons from different manufacturers, or perhaps she places a red ribbon on the people that she kills. Maybe there's nothing to do with a red ribbon. Maybe it's just a case that she has different types of blouses for different situations. She has a combat blouse. She has a talking blouse. She has an eating blouse. Perhaps that's something that she demands to be able to change into different blouses and things. I don't know. It's entirely up to you. But it's about adding a dash of fun. So that, to me, is how one takes a min-max character and actually creates a very interesting character that just happens to have a very good, very focused build that will allow you to absolutely capitalize on the role-playing system that you're playing. I don't know. What do you think about Jinmei, the priestess whose bohemian family wanders the globe, and she likes to put a red ribbon on the souls that she commends unto her god? She's curious and adventurous and kind of just goes with the flow. So when she joins the party is going in interesting places. So she goes with them because she's curious to see and she is interested to learn the outcomes of their adventures. Does that sound like a rather boring character? To me, it gives us quite a lot of interesting hooks. The GM has got the family to play with. She's traveled all over the world, so she could have stopped at any town, anywhere, trained with a certain master, and picked up a whole lot of NPC hooks that way. So it certainly gives us a lot of interesting tidbits with which we might be able to work as a game master. That means it's a good character, in my opinion. What do you think? Is this the right way to min-max characters? Does backstory even play a role? Should it play a role? Personally, I think it should. Should you min-max? Why not? The rules are there, and if you can capitalize that you have a really great character, go for it. My only word of warning, though, is that sometimes min-maxing can create a character that becomes rather stale and boring, because there's the, oh, you hit it. Well, of course you hit it because you've got so many bonuses applied to your character. There's no ways that you could miss it. That becomes very humdrum, very routine. So something to think about is how, in Jinmei's case anyway, once she's mastered the art of open palm devil's strike and she knows that she can hit targets with it, well, now it's time for her to extend herself. Remember, that's how she started. She wanted to learn. Now that she's mastered that technique, perhaps she needs to try a different technique. And how that translates in the game, it means you need to try different ways of describing how the character goes through that combat. Think of different words instead of just, I hit the character with my 50 attacks and I roll 400,000 damage. Rather say, I leap off the wall and I bring my ankle down on the character, dealing 50,000 damage. It's a little bit of a twist, but it makes it that much more interesting and keeps a min-max character, well, fresh. Anyway, until next time, if you are looking for other people to play with, head on over to www.rpgtablefinder.com. That was written exclusively for you by our web goblin to facilitate meeting up like-minded people who watch this show and all the other shows that are on this channel, and maybe is looking for a game either in your area or online. www.rpgtablefinder.com. It is the place to find your next group of players to play with. Until next time, I wish you and yours the very happiest of playing.